Summer is the time for getting away. Families will pack up the car, couples will book weekend getaways, and friends head out to explore somewhere they've never been. And for a few days, you get to step outside your normal routine and experience a completely unfamiliar place. But sometimes, being in an unfamiliar place can make an ordinary vacation feel a little less, well, ordinary. Because when you're staying in a house you've never been to before, exploring unfamiliar woods, or camping somewhere far from home, you don't always know what happened there before you arrived, or what might still be there after dark. You are listening to Unlocking the Paranormal. I am your host, Carrie, and I do appreciate you checking out the show today. If you are a returning listener, you are amazing. And if this is your first time, I do appreciate you checking out the show. This is actually a spooky summer series episode. So, this is a mini episode where I like to share travel stories where people encounter the paranormal while staying at Airbnbs, hotels, cabins, you name it. And for this episode of the Spooky Summer Series, I am going to be sharing 3 stories from people whose vacations and one that's just an outdoor adventure in an unfamiliar place took an unsettling turn. So, settle in. Let's get into this week's episode. This first story was actually shared about a year ago on Reddit, and it was shared by the username Delinda. And it actually takes place in an Airbnb in Salem, Massachusetts on Essex Street. They did not disclose the address, but they did share what they encountered. And this is what they had to say. Last night, I woke up at 3:20 a.m. out of habit. I always check the time on my phone. I noticed the bathroom, hallway, and kitchen lights were on. Both of my friends were giggling in the living room. I found this odd. We all went to bed after midnight. My first instinct was, are they investigating without me? I heard them both giggle again. I presumed they were doing fine without me, so I fell back to sleep. It was around 8 a.m. or so. I was up in bed, looking at my phone. One of my friends stepped into my bedroom and asked, "Did you hear anything last night?" I excitedly shared what I saw. Woke up at 3:20, lights are all on, which I found super odd. Both were giggling, assumed both were investigating. I chose not to join and fell back to sleep. Her eyes grew wide, her face in shock. That's not what happened. Our other friend was harassed by the wife of the captain, likely first owners, in her sleep in the master bedroom. My other friend was sleeping on the couch. She heard mumbling from the master bedroom. She walked to the doorway of the bedroom to see our other friend's leg straight out to the side, as if she was being pulled out of bed. Our friend was screaming in her sleep. She immediately recited the Lord's Prayer. Our friend in bed shot up awake and gasped loudly. They both moved into the living room and sat in shock, quietly, on the couch for some time. They eventually fell asleep in the living room. They never turned on any of the lights, and they never laughed. The lady spirit manipulated my environment to prevent me from helping. The lady spirit made it very clear we were not welcome. She also taught me that spirits can manipulate our environment and our mind to trick us. She knew I was a medium. Had I heard my friends in distress, I would have sensed her energy and determined she was harassing us. I have been to many haunted locations repeatedly with incredible experiences. However, this home was the top. I will never stay at this house again. Someone that well versed on manipulating what we can see is a no thank you for me. Wow. I need to remember that when I go to Salem, I am going to try to find an Airbnb on Essex Street. That's for sure. I really don't like the girl getting pulled out of the bed or the leg being pulled out of the bed. That's a little bit much for me. So that definitely would be terrifying. Whatever spirit is in there seems very, very powerful because not only are they manipulating everybody there, but pulling that girl's leg out of the bed, making the other girl hear giggling when that's not what was going on, and preventing her from hearing the screaming. So I'm pretty sure if someone's in the same Airbnb as you, you're probably going to hear them scream. I don't know, the being pulled out of the bed thing is just like straight out of a horror movie. Ugh, I don't like it. I that would be so damn scary. Well, let me know. Would you go to this Airbnb knowing what had happened here? Would you attempt to investigate here? Would you attempt to stay here? Now, I don't know anything about Salem, so I have no idea how many Airbnbs are along that street or if it's even still being rented out as an Airbnb at this point. But I would still be curious to see if I could find an Airbnb rental on that street when it comes time for me to go to Salem. Gosh, have you guys had any experiences in Salem? If you have, let me know. You can email your story to unlockingtheparanormalpod@gmail.com, or you can call the hotline and leave a voicemail and share your story that way. Either way, you can remain anonymous or feel free to share your name, and I will share it on the podcast. Okay, let's get into the next story that was actually shared on Our Paranormal. It was shared a while ago, and I must have not remembered to save the username, so I can't give credit, so I apologize. Now, this next story, they're not on vacation, but they are exploring a new part of a town that they just moved to. So, in a way, it's like a vacation because they're in an unfamiliar place. They're exploring the surrounding forest. So, I thought this would still be perfect to share in the Spooky Summer series. So, let's get into what they wrote. It was a couple of years ago. My partner and I had recently moved to a town in New Hampshire, near the Concord area, but a bit further north. The town has been in the works of planning a whitewater river park on some old building ruins near the downtown area. My partner and I were exploring those ruins, talking and enjoying the surrounding forest. We were walking for about 10 minutes. We turned a corner to find a brick foundation, a rectangle about 30 to 60 feet across with 3 separate rooms, and a roof accessible on the back 2 corners. These rooms were quite large, with doorways about 5 feet across. The first room was mostly debris and leftover brick, presumably from deconstruction of the rest of the building or buildings from the surrounding area. The second room had writing spray painted on the wall which said, "My baby rests here." The room at the furthest end had a chair at the back, with a sheet covering what looked like a figure. There was no movement, but my partner and I were terrified. We worked up the courage to throw a rock into the third room. There was still no movement. So we stayed to explore a little more. We decided to sit on the roof because the rooms were dark and terrifying. While we were sitting on the roof, talking and enjoying each other's company, there was suddenly the sound of somebody knocking very loudly, 7 times. We stopped talking, listening to our surroundings. The knocking came again. We decided to leave as we felt we had overstayed our welcome in that space. As we start walking away from the foundations towards the trail that leads out of the forest, the knocking continued, getting closer. We make it to the trail and the knocking continues. Still 7 knocks. Silence for a few seconds, and then 7 more knocks. Each time closer to us. We start running. We both ran track and cross country in high school, so we can run pretty fast. The knocking grew louder, closer and closer. behind us as we jogged and then ran and then sprinted for the edge of the woods. As we exited the canopy of trees, the knocking was either gone or drowned out by the sounds of cars on the road 50 feet from the forest. We talked about what it might have been, a houseless person messing with us, or maybe even a group of them. But the knocking was very deliberate, forceful, and each time 7 knocks. The source was not identifiable. The silence and understanding that my partner and I had to exit those woods as fast as possible did not feel like it was encouraged by any living human presence. I would love to hear any theories or similar stories. As would I. It sounds like the knocking was a disembodied noise, especially if they continued to hear it even as they were running away and the sounds got closer to them. They didn't necessarily say that the sounds got louder, like they were hearing it from a greater distance. Rather, it sounded like it was getting closer to them. The woods are already a creepy place, and then you mix in abandoned buildings. That's just like a recipe to be automatically creeped out, be weirded out, and maybe even start to feel a little paranoid. But then I don't think a person is going to make up knocking sounds. And the fact that there was 2 of them that heard it and witnessed it, I don't think that it was like a natural sound of like, the trees. Like if a tree is making a noise with the wind or whatever. It's definitely strange. And now I definitely want to add New Hampshire to my list of places to go visit. If anybody is listening and you live on the East Coast and you have any New Hampshire stories or any stories from the East Coast, send those my way. I would love to hear them. Again, the email is unlockingtheparanormalpod@gmail.com, or you can call the hotline and the phone number will be in the show notes. Okay, so this last story that I have for today's mini episode was a response to a question that was asked on Ask Reddit. The question was actually asked 10 years ago, and this story was shared 10 years ago, so it's quite an older story. The question was, campers or rangers of Reddit, what's the most unsettling, creepy, and or supernatural thing that has happened to you while in the woods? And this story is one of the responses. So our first 2 stories came from the East Coast, and now we're going to zip across the US over to Big Sur, California. Now, I don't know what user shared it because it just shows as deleted. But this is what they had to say. I went camping in Big Sur, California with one of my best friends. It was off season and on a Sunday night, so the place was practically empty. We picked a campsite about a half-a-mile walk to the ocean. It was in a huge open field surrounded by a lush forest. In the background were limestone mountains, and you could hear the crashing of the ocean waves. Very epic. We spend the night around a campfire telling stories and eating. We're both pretty experienced backpackers too. We are very diligent in ensuring we do not leave any trace of food by our campsite. And almost everything other than our essentials goes to the bear box bag. I have my dog with me too. She's ADA, so she was allowed on the site. She's leashed around one of the few trees in the field on a long metal leash on a full harness. It's a full moon out, and it was pouring beautiful blue light across the field. It was absolutely pristine and breathtaking. Around 1 a.m., something spooks my dog. Now, she is used to the woods and has an incredibly calm demeanor. But she was flipping out, tugging hard on the leash like she was desperate to escape, and she does. She pulls so hard that her harness snaps, and she goes bolting across the field into the wilderness. I lose my cool. I drop everything and bolt after her. I'm not thinking straight. Running into the woods at night? My only concern was getting her, even if it meant risking my own safety. I rescue her. I find her curled up in a random clearing in the woods, looking ashamed and terrified. Thank God she ran in a straight line. Otherwise, I would have been totally lost. I walked back carrying her and my heart is pounding furiously at the horror of the idea of her being lost in the wilderness forever. The thought now is still unbearable. I can feel her heart pounding too in my arms. She is still terrified, no longer in a great mood. We all head to bed in my tent. But my dog won't lay down. She refuses. Her ears are up, and she's staring intensely at the tent wall, as if she could see through it. And she's tracking something. It takes a while for my nerves to calm down from my chase earlier. I'm working hard at taking deep breaths and reminding myself that I'm prepared for anything that I could encounter, that my dog is simply spooked from maybe a raccoon. Maybe she's just exhausted and acting up. And then I hear it. Cackling. Like a high-pitched laughter that is full of a disgusting type of joy. And it's coming from outside my tent. Fuck deep breathing. My senses go on high alert. My body tenses up so tightly, it's like I'm about to break in half. I can't even breathe. And then I hear even more cackling. Like a group of witches were doing something evil just yards away. It fills my hearing. Laughing and laughing and more laughing. It's loud and it just sounds so wrong. I can't even bring myself to move to look at my friend. It's like my entire body has given up. The laughs are then followed up with blood-curdling screams. It honestly sounded like somebody was being murdered. It was full of panic and horror and sadness. Dear God. Could have been wolves or coyotes killing their prey, but it sounded so distinctly human. The laughter, the sobbing, the screams. Finally, my friend says something. What the fuck? I even began to laugh a little because the situation was so intense and wild, I had no idea how else to react. I can't handle this, I say, and suggest that we bolt for the car. It's a mile away, so we decide to stay out. We just listen to the laughter and screaming until it fades away. Even when it was over, I didn't bother going to bed. Ooh, that is really terrifying. So, yes, one can easily try to dismiss the story and say that the dog was lured off by these coyotes or wolves, but I'm going to be real honest with you guys. I don't even know in California, do they have wolves? Maybe coyotes, but do they have wolves? Is that even like a normal? I'm going to Google this. I'm curious. Sit tight. Okay. So I did a quick Google search and Big Sur, they do have coyotes. So maybe they heard coyotes, but I don't think I've ever heard a coyote sound like a human laughing. And I mean, I live in Iowa. We've got coyotes all over the place. You get coyotes and I've gotten coyotes in my backyard and I live in town. You know, you got to be really careful with your pets to make sure that they don't get lured away and then the coyotes, eat them for dinner. And I've heard stories about, hearing wild animals sounding like babies crying or a cat meowing, because I've had that. I'm pretty sure it was a bobcat. I live in Des Moines, you guys. Lived in a house in Des Moines in the middle of the city. I had a freaking bobcat attacking another cat and it sounded like a baby crying. But I've never heard of an animal sounding like a witch cackle. That's just really weird. And anytime your pets are sensing something and they are terrified, you should probably be equally or even more terrified. I think this person is just very lucky that they found their dog and that nothing bad happened to any one of them being out there. Who knows? They could have they could have been near people doing a really weird sacrificial ritual and they could have been listening to the sounds of someone getting murdered. Like, I don't fucking know. Like, people do weird shit. People do weird shit out in the woods in the middle of the night. Damn. I know for a fact I would not have fallen back to sleep and I don't blame them for not going back to sleep. What do you guys think of this last story? Do you think that they had just heard a wild animal, or do you think that there were people actively practicing some kind of satanic witchcraft, cackling and being just fucking evil out in the woods? Or do you think it was a witch more in a traditional sense that you see like on TV with like the hag and the cackling? Like, do you think that those types of witches really exist? Let me know. If you have any witch stories of your own where you're encountering a evil witch and or something weird in the woods, you can email your story to me at unlockingtheparanormalpod@gmail.com. You can send me a DM. You can give me a call on the hotline. The phone number will be in the show notes, or the phone number can be found on any of my social media accounts. I am on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. And that is actually it for today's mini spooky summer series episode. If you enjoyed hearing these stories, don't forget to share this podcast with your friends, family, and favorite coworker. Head over to my social media, start sharing my posts, sharing my accounts with people that you think might enjoy spooky stories. And I do appreciate you for listening to today's entire episode. And until next time, stay curious.